What's up, guys? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. And tonight we have a very, very wide range of topics to cover. First, starting off with what happened yesterday in the great state, our bordering state from Pennsylvania. In Ohio, the vote in the middle of August, all things considered, to protect their constitution, which will then protect the right to an abortion. We'll get into that. Then we're going to talk about Operation Lone Star, which is something that I've been meaning to talk about for the almost 2 or 3 weeks now. But now today seems like a day where Trump is not getting arrested, and we have a little bit more time to dive into something that has been kind of consistent throughout the period, which is a border policy by Texas Republican abhorrent governor Greg Abbott. We'll dive into that. We will also talk about the Marvel visual effects workers forming a union, what that means. Will that be good? Will that be bad? Spoiler alert, it will be good. But always gotta, see both sides, I suppose. But I'm a union guy, so you know where I stand. And last but not least, as you see on the bottom of the screen, or in the thumbnail, or in the title, Fox News and other right-wingers celebrating the loss of our national soccer team, our women's national soccer team in the World Cup, and their anti-American attacks. And yes, I will say that unironically. So, with all that, let's dive right into it. I don't know. Today, actually, I feel like could be a shorter show. And every time I feel like I say that, it doesn't end up being a shorter show. But sometimes I believe that, and then I just find a thing to rant on. But uh, I think I should say also, forewarning for next week, the 16th of August, if you are a viewer or listener that listens live or like the day after, next week I may have to have a pre-recorded episode because there is the hearing for the Central Bucks School Board map, the CB Fair Votes proposal, in which I will be part of the presentation putting forth a counter proposal to the gerrymandered map that was voted through by the Central Bucks School Board. So it happens to be at 7 o'clock at the same time as the show normally airs, unfortunately. But if you are in the area, if you're in Central Bucks, instead of watching this program, which you should be doing every single week, you should head on over to Central Bucks West at 7 o'clock and come and listen to the proposal and support it. If you do, that would be great, and then you can listen to whatever I put out after. Because I do think some form of pre-recorded episode or an episode on a different day, whether Tuesday or Thursday, I haven't decided yet, but stay tuned if you're a regular viewer or listener. But with that, let's dive into Ohio. In Ohio, there was this thing called issue number 1. Simple enough. It was the only issue on the ballot, I believe, yesterday across the entire state, in which it was a well, I'll read the specifics, but functionally, it was a constitutional amendment to change the threshold to constitutional amendments. So here we have from the AP. Ohio voters resoundingly rejected a Republican-backed measure that would have made it more difficult to change the state's constitution, setting up a fall campaign that will become the nation's latest referendum on abortion rights since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned nationwide protections last year. The defeat of issue 1 on Tuesday keeps in place a simple majority threshold for passing future constitutional amendments rather than the 60% supermajority that was proposed. If supporters said the higher bar would its supporters said the higher bar would protect the state's foundational document from outside interest. So, really quick on this. This is kind of like the filibuster. This is basically creating a filibuster on the Ohio Constitution. Now, that being said, it would be a filibuster not for the Ohio State Senate, not for the Ohio State House, but for the Ohioans, the Ohio people, which is not, I'll repeat, not how it should be. Now, you and I could maybe disagree on some things here, but in my opinion, the will of the people on these referendums should be upheld, whether I agree with it or not, right? So we'll get into the specifics here in a second, but when we talk about the will of the people and the Constitution and the democracy and the republic and all these things, right? These foundational, these words that kind of mean stuff, ignore like the people. Let's put that one aside for right now. But the republic and the democracy are important, obviously. But when you talk about a state's constitution, I can use Pennsylvania as an example because there are plenty of examples where the Constitution has been amended by simple majority votes by the people. But let's say the U.S. Constitution, to have an amendment, I believe it needs 67%, and it also needs it would need 67% of the, oh man, this is bad. This is a civics education 101. It would need 67% of the states to approve an amendment to the Constitution. I believe it's like an absurd amount in the actual Senate and Congress to approve it. That's something I should probably know off the top of my head. But you need a state referendums and a constitutional convention to then approve a constitutional amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Now, state constitutions typically are amended by simple majority or whatever rules are set in stone in that state. For Ohio, it's 50% plus one vote to change the Constitution. Not 50% plus one vote of the state house, like we said, of the people's vote on a specific referendum. So, issue one, as pointed out here, is not an actual referendum on abortion. There is an abortion referendum in the fall, in November. And the Republicans tried to quickly change the threshold from 50 to 60%, a 10% margin increase, which, by the way, there is the slim possibility, and I think the margins, I don't know if they're up here exactly, but the was done. So the 60% threshold was basically functionally, and I'll read this now, because of a poll that said 59% of Ohio's voters support abortion. So, voters in several states have approved ballot questions protecting access to abortion since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, but typically have done so with less than 60% of the vote. AP Votecast polling last year found that 59% of Ohio voters say abortion should be generally legal. So the 60% threshold is possible, would have been possible, but it is a much higher threshold than we would have expected, right? It's a much higher threshold than just a 50%. Because remember, if you look at a poll that says 60% of people support abortion, that means 40% don't. So that's a 20% gap, right? Like sometimes people like kind of miss that. Like as one goes up, the other one goes down. I know that's silly, but like it's a something that like, oh, like, well, we're really split. Well, no, we're not really split. And this is like, it says Ohio voters say abortion should be generally legal, right? If you like stipulate and say like, well, it should be legal up until the foundation set forth by Roe versus Wade, the precedent set forth by Roe versus Wade, 24 weeks, I bet that number goes up. And say like, well, that's the beginning of the third trimester. That is not, I bet you that would probably have that number go higher. But that's besides the point. In November, this is when the vote will happen on this measure. I also want to point out that if I believe, so just so we all, I've said this before on the show, but it's important. When there are constitutional amendments, this is across the board. It's definitely the case in Pennsylvania, and it seems to be the case at least in other states. But Republicans know this, so they do this on purpose. The way that you craft the language of a constitutional amendment referendum question on the ballot, it is most beneficial to the side that says yes. No matter the question, you are starting from a head start, essentially, from a yes vote. That is not to say, like, it is impossible, because this Ohio vote was a no vote that won. But yes votes typically go through. So Republicans, knowing this, chose to say, like, do you want to raise, I don't have the exact phrasing in front of me, but do you want to raise the threshold from 50% to 60% to amend the Constitution? So typically, people say yes. In Pennsylvania, we've seen at least in the I've been voting for what, 6 years now, 5 or 6 years? No, more than that. I've been voting since 2016. Jeez, 7 years that I've been voting. Right, I've seen a number of referendums, and they're not necessarily called that in Pennsylvania, but people just go, are there questions on the ballot? But, some of them are actual constitutional amendments, and those are always skewed towards yes. So Republicans in Pennsylvania always skew there because they've been in control up until now, where we have a split House and Senate. Up until now, though, it's always been yes for the Republican answer, no for the Democratic answer. That's pretty much how it's gone. And to see a no vote get this result, it is very interesting. And I think it's a telltale sign of the campaigning issue that abortion is for Democrats and for Republicans for that matter. Um, it's I need to pull up I want to get the exact numbers. It doesn't have it in this AP. Um, okay. So, with all precincts reporting and 58,000 absentee and provisional ballots outstanding, the measure was failing, which means for us that's good because the measure itself was trying to raise the threshold by a margin of 57% to 42.99%. This again, this is a good threshold to show like, okay, well, in a off year election, 2023, off year meaning just like a non-presidential election, and a non-midterm election, like a non-2022, 2018, 2012 election, and in a non-fall election where this is not a primary, this is just for this issue, you saw nearly 3 million Ohio voters come out, and 57%, which, remember, in low turnout, this is, again, broad statement here, so take this with a caveat. Broad statements, in low turnout elections, Republicans have a higher chance of winning because their voters have a higher propensity of voting. Older white folks for that, like if you want to be very specific, vote at a higher rate than younger people, than minority voters, than any other group. That is the group that votes, and they overwhelmingly vote for Republicans. So in these off-year, weird, random date elections, you would expect in a higher Republican rate of return than a general election. So that's good sign for abortion rights. So this fails. It goes to the November vote where they will need a simple majority, and that will hopefully protect a woman's right to choose their health care and having autonomy over their body. But, can't take things for granted, guys. So remember, even though this looks good right now, November's a long ways away, but it's a short ways away. We have to keep our eye on the ball and convince people to get out and vote, whether you're in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, Arizona, Wisconsin, California, everywhere in between, because you never know when this crap is going on. Like, quick tangent before we move on. We know when things are going on, but even me, as somebody that is extremely plugged in with Pennsylvania politics, sometimes struggle to know when these constitutional amendments appear on the ballot because they are passed at the last second. They are put on at the last second, right before ballots are printed. So this is exactly why you have to keep an eye on the ball and just say, all right, in Pennsylvania or New Jersey or California, we might be okay for right now, but in places like Wisconsin, places like Ohio, places like Florida, where you have the sanctimonious running rampant, places where you have a Republican governor or a Republican state house or Republican state senate, and Democrats control one of them. Specifically, if you have, if you use Pennsylvania as an example, this is a good example, but let's say that the Democrats didn't pick up the state house here in Pennsylvania. If you had both the state house and the state senate controlled by Republicans in Pennsylvania, this is a fact, and Josh Shapiro was the governor, the plan was that they would pass a referendum that would appear on the primary ballot to ban abortion up to X amount of weeks. At the time, people were saying 6, 8, 10 weeks, whatever it would have been. In prior, you have to have it approved by 2 consecutive Congresses in Pennsylvania to have it appear on the ballot. And they were going to do it for the second time had they held the House. So Democrats winning the House in November of 2022 absolutely saved us in many cases, even the headache of fighting this fight. Although I think sometimes it's beneficial to fight this fight. I think Ohioans are going to see that the Republicans in their state house and the Republicans in their state senate and the Republicans that are going to run against Sherrod Brown for the Senate seat, they are not looking out for the average person in Ohio. They do not care about protecting women's right to choose. They don't care about raising the minimum wage. They don't care about any of that stuff. They don't care. Sherrod Brown, although he is not extremely progressive, he is extremely progressive when it comes to unions, which is a good thing if you're in a state like Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, these states. That is the type of Democrat that you need to protect, and you need to get a lot of support behind them. But an issue like this is going to drive people out for 2024. So let's move on. And yes, time to Riz. And we're not talking Rizzo the Rat. Although, speaking of Rizzo the Rat, Marvel Virtual Effects, and if you don't know, Disney owns both Marvel and the Muppets, which Rizzo's technically a puppet, but I'm sure that there are CG versions of it. Marvel VFX, or virtual effects artists that do all the special effects in the movies, TV shows, etc., are taking the step towards unionization. Now, this does not mean that they have a union. This does not mean that they've been recognized as a union. This advertisement wants me to play RuneScape. Here we see Captain America, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson. But while this is happening, remember, you can't just overnight have a union. A union has to have a vote. It has to be approved, and it has to be recognized. Now, I would imagine that this is a union that will be recognized just because of SAG-AFTRA and the Writers Guild, all of these existing in the ancillary pieces around the VFX workers. But I'll just read this real quick. Visual effects artists working for Marvel have taken the first step towards unionization in a notoriously poorly represented area of the film industry. According to a statement from the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, a group of on-set VFX artists employed by the studio have filed a petition with the U.S. National Labor Relations Board, which, by the way, has been doing an amazing job under Biden. That is a major step forward under the Biden administration compared to the Trump administration, and even compared to the Obama administration, where labor has been actually gaining during the Biden administration. We've seen it in a number of times. The unions and the strikes and the labor movements have been gaining power, utilizing their power to get contracts. You see Pennsylvania nurses now making moves. You see SAG-AFTRA. You saw the UPS workers. You saw the railroad workers, which, yes, the Biden administration did not do well on, but in the end came back to give the sick pay that they needed to those workers as well. So again, that was kind of under the radar, but that is important. Now back to this real quick. Hailing the move as a major shift in an industry that has largely remained non-union since VFX was pioneered during production of the Star Wars films in the 1970s, the IATSE said a supermajority of Marvel's 50-plus VFX crew had signed authorization cards indicating they wished to be represented by the union, which already represents around 168,000 technicians and craftspeople in live theater, film, and TV and associated areas in the US and Canada. And if I'm not mistaken, former guest of the show, David McMahon, is a part of this union, I believe. I know he talks about this a lot on his social media. Maybe I'll bring him on soon enough to recap some of these actions. But for those who don't understand the impact of this, let me first say, costs have been cut in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and people have taken a notice, because when you watch shows like maybe She-Hulk or Secret Invasion or I guess the Guardians of the Galaxy, not so much, but in other like more minor parts of the overall MCU, which we're going nerdy here, but you've seen the budget cuts in the VFX. You've seen that the cuts come to the labor costs, which then shows as the actual production looks worse. But you might say, well, Connor, actually, Ben Shapiro, Connor, actually, if the union is in there, that means that they will raise prices for the labor to make the shows. That is right. They would raise the labor costs for the shows and the movies. That is right. Because their wages would be higher for the VFX workers. The biggest problem for virtual effects workers and the gaming industry, for that matter, as well, because, remember, guys, I'm a hashtag gamer, is just over grinding workers. They grind workers down and they try to just milk as much out of the workers as they possibly can just by saying, well, you guys love World of Warcraft, right? So you should be grinding 15, 16 hours a day to make this next expansion in time, which is Activision Blizzard. Well, you love Thor, Connor. So to have the next Thor movie come up here, you have to have all these workers grinding to make sure that Mjolnir looks right when the lightning comes off of it, which is the most minuscule part to me about these movies. But these workers have been overworked, and the actual, I just came to me, the actual terminology that they use in the gaming industry, and I'm sure the VFX industry, is called crunch. They crunch as much out of the workers. So let's just say Thor 5 is coming out, which, woohoo, that would be awesome. Would love that. But it's coming out, let's just say, in January of 2024. So from now until then, there's a deadline for these workers. These workers are not paid significantly, or if at all necessarily, overtime for the work that they're performing. Again, this is why a union is necessary to actually protect the health conditions, the working conditions, the salary, and the benefits. And the benefits could be from retirement to residual work, which again, that's more on the actor's side, but I think the VFX side is you can make an argument as well, because you are creating intellectual property for a company that then that company owns. So at least getting a portion of that. Now that might be way out there, but in my opinion, I don't think so. I think that that's something that is a reasonable ask, especially when you're raking in billions of dollars off of the IP. But these are all things that, okay, between now and January, yeah, you got to get this stuff done. But if you had a union, you would at least be able to control some portion of how many hours somebody's working. And I mean, the union would be able to control this, not the business coercing people into doing it. You'd be able to control how much overtime you're getting paid for those hours that are considered necessary for the crunch. You would be able to have health care for times that you do not feel well. If you feel sick, or if you need to take sick days, you would have 6 days. You would have PTO. You would have this stuff built in. And remember, sometimes when these movies wrap, they close the studios. The in reaction to people talking about crunch, I brought up She-Hulk, I brought up Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion less so, but I remember when She-Hulk was coming out, people talked about, oh, it looks horrible, it looks like Shrek. Well, it kind of does. It kind of does. Like, I'm not going to lie, right? I'm not going to lie and say it didn't. I like the show, but sometimes, or Black Panther. Black Panther was a great movie in my opinion, but the effects in like some of the fights where like T'Challa's fighting Killmonger, it doesn't look good. It just didn't look right. Okay? Those are like my nitpicks. But the reason is that when this crunch comes out and they cut the budget, it's not like it's just like, oh, well, now it's going to get miraculously better. No, it's like that's just what it is. Like, you're not going to get better product by cutting costs. That's just not the case. This is why when they're going to start to move towards, I'm sure that this is probably a concern for the VFX teams too, when they start trying to automate effects and they try to automate, you know, characters and designs, these things don't look right. You can tell AI generated art a lot of the time. It doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. At least a human is designing the virtual effects and the graphics in some of these movies still. And I think that they deserve to have the right to unionize because they are putting out and creating moments in cinematic history. I'll just say that will last a very, very long time. I mean, if you just think about Avengers Endgame becoming, I think it's the most popular movie in the theater of all time. I think it surpassed Avatar. But which by the way, if you think Avatar is a good movie, that should be at the top of that list. Like I think we should have a conversation because that movie is not that good in my opinion. But Avengers Endgame was like a gigantic, colossal Hollywood event like that tons and tons of people went to the theater to see. And so much of that film was made possible by these workers. That's not to take away from, you know, the big stars that are the actors in the show or the movies. But so much of the magic that happens on the screen is made by these people, and they deserve to have the same rights and protections as many other people in the industry have, like the writers, like the actors. And by the way, those actors and writers deserve to have better representation, or they are using their representation and their leverage to gain what is theirs rightfully. So I believe this is a good move, and I hope to see that this union comes to fruition. All right. I am going to. I am torn as to what I want to go to next. Um, I know Operation Lone Star is going to absolutely piss me off, so let's go with the culture war nonsense that is the right wingers freaking out about Megan Rapinoe and the United States women's national soccer team. If you guys have seen over the last week, a little bit less than a week, because the U.S. soccer team tied and then lost in the World Cup in penalty kicks against Sweden, I believe. I'm not a soccer fan, so to me, I wasn't really watching this, but as a Patriot, I always root for America in whether it's the World Baseball Classic, which I didn't watch, or the Olympics, which I don't watch, or the soccer, which I don't watch. But you know, if it was on at like a bar or whatever, I trust me. Or like when the men played in the World Cup, or yeah, I think it was a World Cup recently. I rooted for them, even though I don't watch it. Right? Like it's the same thing. It's like no, like in Rocky 4, we're rooting for Rocky. We're not rooting for Drago. We're not rooting for Russia in that. Again, even though it's like this nationalism, it's not really nationalism. I would call it patriotism. But on some level, it's like blind, you know, blind support for your country. But this is something that it's like it's frustrating, right? Because if if there was if there was a right winger, which I'm sure that there are some right wingers on the U.S. women's national soccer team, I'm sure that there's not that many of them because they're young women and they kind of understand what's happening in this country. But I am sure that there are a few, right? Um, they would be touted and shown on every Fox News. Remember Gina Carano? What is it? Gina Carano. Gina Carano, who was the former UFC fighter who was on The Mandalorian, who lost her job because of her comparing, I believe it was COVID vaccination to the Holocaust. Um, she lost her job on The Mandalorian, I think rightfully so, and um, she became a darling of the right wing, right? so many athletes and so many people in this spotlight and so many people that love America, love these sports, are also left wing. They are also progressive or liberal, if you want to say. And whenever Fox News can attach onto one person that's not, they're like, oh, Kurt Schilling. I love Kurt Schilling. Come on, Fox News. I need you on Fox News because you're the best baseball player that we could possibly get and still be right wing. Kurt Schilling's a nut job, by the way. And sorry, Red Sox, not good. But these right wingers love to find an enemy. Oh, Megan Rapinoe, she's got very short hair. Sometimes it's like bluish. She's public enemy number one. Even though they've won 2 World Cups in a row, this would have been the third. They were going for the third one in a row. The right-wingers cheer on the national team losing. I say this a lot, and I think I genuinely believe this. A lot of these people in the media, a lot of these people that want to find these scapegoats to look for, they hate America. They hate what it has become. They hate what it is becoming. They don't even necessarily like what it was. They just have rose tinted glasses on at what their childhood was. Like growing up for me, like it wasn't weird to see like Venus and Serena Williams like exceeding and becoming like the greatest at their sport. It wasn't weird to be like, oh, there's like actually really good women athletes. In fact, I went to a high school where the girls' track team, not the cross country team, although I don't know, maybe the cross country team is good too, but the track team in my grade set state records at the Penn Relays. I've been around all these different athletic achievements my whole life, but Republicans and Fox News in particular, and the anchors ancillary, so OAN, Newsmax, all these right-wingers, the Dave Rubins of the world, the Shapiros of the world, they utilize women's sports, and as you will see moving forward, here in Central Bucks, they are weaponizing women's sports to otherize and create xenophobia about trans athletes, even when they don't care about women's sports. They hate women's sports when they actually take a stand. They hate women's sports when they they say I should have autonomy over my own body. They hate women's sports when somebody has an opinion that differs from theirs. And they I admit I don't watch soccer in general. But I didn't watch these games. First of all, I was gonna watch the first one, but it was at like 3 a.m, so I was like, oh wait, just kidding. But it's besides the point. They don't actually care until they can find somebody to utilize as a weapon, utilize as a target. And Megan Rapinoe is somebody that they can do that to because she has taken a knee during the national anthem, which, by the way, does not mean that you hate America. There's a specific reason people protest symbols or songs or all those things, right? Jesse Waters in this clip is going to go after Megan Rapinoe because she missed penalty kicks, which I could not personally tell you how hard that is, but in the World Cup, I can imagine is very hard. I was a long snapper in football, and in my high school, I know that I got nervous every single time that I long snapped a punt. I played middle linebacker too, but that was not nearly as nerve-wracking as everyone's waiting on this long snap. I'm holding the ball, and I have to snap it back to the punter. And if I mess up, my whole team is screwed up. Penalty kicks, I can imagine, at the World Cup are a little more nerve-wracking than that. And Megan Rapinoe misses a penalty kick, and she's shown laughing as she runs off. And right-wingers cling on this like, she did it on purpose. She wants us to lose. And then they cheer on losing, by the way. But then they go, she wanted to lose. She threw the game. She hates America. It's like, well, no, she's probably laughing because she's having a nervous like breakdown. First of all, that would be my guess, because she seems to laugh in a lot of times which would seem like she's nervous. That's my read. I've only seen her in a couple press conferences and a couple games, but that's my understanding of this situation. Sometimes when I get nervous, anybody gets nervous, but I know that I do it. Sometimes, if your boss calls you out for something, you go, huh, what? And like, you're just smiling and laughing through it. It happened to me today, literally. But it's a fixation where they can just go, wow, this woman, she has an opinion. Let's go after her. And we're totally patriots. We love America. Let's make America great again.
Americans are dying to be proud of our athletes, especially ones who are proud of our country. But it's hard to root for an athlete who disparages the country.
By the way, the only one that they've like recently lifted up was a guy that was like anti-vax and played on the Toronto Blue Jays, which, by the way, for those who don't know, Toronto is not in America.
In front of the...
And here's the other thing. If you can't be proud of someone like LeBron James, one of the most dynamic and explosive athletes and most popular athletes in America, I'm sorry, like, he's not like that controversial because he stood up for what? Black Lives Matter? You hate him? If you can't like get behind, I don't know. I'm not even an Eagles fan, I'm a Giants fan, but like someone like Jalen Hurts or these people like Saquon Barkley, like, because what? They're just not ultra white right-wing MAGA people outwardly. You shouldn't be proud of them. You can only be proud of Tillman. Oh wait, can't be proud of Pat Tillman. They can't be proud of Pat Tillman. We could be proud of Pat Tillman and the sacrifice that he made for our country. But right-wingers, I think they should look at what he said. They're looking for somebody that's Captain America, although the actor that plays Captain America is also progressive. But they're looking for somebody that's Captain America, but right-wing Captain America, not like everybody's welcome here, liberty and justice for all Captain America. They want like, we want Christian nationalism Captain America.
The world over and over again. Donald Trump, who has a history with Rapinos.
They do like Tim Tebow. I'll say I liked Tim Tebow when he was playing as well. But the thing is that Tim Tebow also wasn't like exclusionary to other people. I will also point out that Tim Tebow used to kneel during the national anthem. Now, he was praying, so they didn't give a shit. But Tim Tebow took a knee during the national anthem. It's okay. If Colin Kaepernick did it, then he needs to be ostracized and kicked out of the NFL.
Said this, quote, "The shocking and totally unexpected loss by the U.S. women's soccer team to Sweden is fully emblematic of what is happening to our once great nation under crooked Joe Biden. Many of our players were openly hostile to America."
The same players that have been on a lot of the same players that have been on the same team for the last 2 World Cups that actually won the World Cups.
"No other country behaved in such a manner, or even close. Woke equals failure. Nice shot, Megan. The USA is going to hell. MAGA." Joe Biden, or Joe Biden's staff, wrote this.
What's insane here is that Biden is going to sound like an absolute based legend in this tweet. And they're going to be like, wow, Biden's proud? Wow, what do we want, participation trophies for everybody? Well, first of all, boomers are the ones that started participation trophies. I never got them, but boomers started that shit. And second, well, the president should be proud of the national team. If you're let's just say, if you're an Olympic weightlifter, and you go and you compete at the, let's change that. If you're Simone Biles, because remember, Simone Biles is I don't know gymnastics, but is well known as pretty much the best gymnast in America and largely in the world. But in the last Olympics had to step back because of mental health problems. These same right-wingers would never say that they're proud of her when she comes, because guess what? In the next Olympics, I'm sure that she'll probably be back. She'll probably be winning. And she won so many gold medals before that. I don't know how many off the top of my head, but she was part of winning gold medals. But when she had to take the smart step to do what's best for her mental health, which also probably would have changed her physical health and her physical performance, we can say we were proud of you even though you didn't win. That's okay to say that, right? It's okay because guess what? Every single time that I've competed in a powerlifting meet, except my first one, I didn't win, but people were proud of me because I put my best effort into it. I didn't win the championship in football my senior year. We made the playoffs. We won 2 playoff games, but people were proud of our team. My brother's football team last year, same thing. They didn't win all of it, but we were proud of them. They lost. We were proud of them. They tried. So this is based Biden coming in. After Trump is saying that America is going to hell.
Made your country proud. Congratulations on an incredible run. This team is something special, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you continue to inspire Americans with your grit and determination on and off the field. This is the worst U.S. women have performed.
Yeah. So as Jesse Waters says there, it's the worst they've performed in a very long time. That's true. But that doesn't mean because they went woke. Some of the most woke athletes in America are the best athletes in America, by the way. Just say it. Just say it. I'll show you one more clip from these right-wingers. Here's former Fox host who left the company after she came out in supporting of, or in solidarity of, the other women at Fox News that were being harassed, which, by the way, I don't know if people forgot about that, but Roger Ailes, Bill O'Reilly, all these other people that were harassing women all throughout Fox News, Megyn Kelly left that. And remember, Megyn Kelly, who now is supportive of Donald Trump again, who I think Donald Trump called her, said she was bleeding out of all over her body or something like that. I'd have to pull up the exact quote. That's why he wouldn't deal with her on the debate. Remember that. That was Donald Trump saying that while running for president, that he wouldn't go on a debate stage because she's a nasty woman. She's bleeding out of all of her holes or something like that. I am not making that up. Go and look that up from 2016. This is Megyn frickin' Kelly, who formerly had a job on MSNBC or NBC because they were trying to move right. Because liberal media is so liberal, guys, that they wanted Megyn Kelly, who said that Santa can only be white. Here's Megyn Kelly saying that she's happy that the U.S. national team lost.
They refused to honor anything we stand for. And therefore, I'm thrilled they lost. Good. I'm glad you went down. You don't support America. I don't support you.
Yeah, so I don't understand the you don't support America piece of this. They're representing the American national team. They support America. But, I guess that's besides the point, right? This is we're in a post-fact world. If you even so dare as protest something in America, unless you're a right-winger, which protests all the time, like the COVID lockdowns or the vaccine, or, you support the division in the country, you support xenophobia, that stuff's fine. But if you want to make America better, then you hate America. Speaking of things that make you hate parts of America, Operation Lone Star, as many of you may know, many of you may not know, is something that is going on at the U.S. border. And we have talked about the United States border a few times on the program before, but probably not enough. It is something that is difficult to talk about because I don't see an actual path forward for what needs to be done, which is comprehensive comprehensive immigration reform. I actually closed out Twitter, which I shouldn't have, but comprehensive border reform, which I wish it was Operation Doan's Bones. It's not. Doan's Bones would have been better if you're getting some ribs. Uh, yeah, and as Lindsay points out, remember Trump MAGA hates when people are captured too. Yeah, that is in regards to John McCain, which he said, "I like my my senators not captured or something like that. My soldiers not captured or something like that." Um, yeah, despicable. I like my presidents not 3 times indicted, twice impeached. How about that? But here we have Operation Lone Star, which is an absolute disaster at the border. Here we have Democratic legislators in the United States have voiced outrage over the latest methods used by the U.S. state of Texas at the border with Mexico to prevent migrants and asylum seekers from entering the country. Remember, asylum seekers have to hold on, I'm making myself full screen here. I need to emphasize this, okay? If you're a right winger and you're watching this right now, please listen to my voice, and because this is a fact. This is not an opinion. This is a fact. Asylum seekers, refugees, they're two technically different, but both of them, in order to get asylum status or refugee status in this country, have to, yes, illegally cross the border to legally be processed as a refugee or an asylum seeker. Connor, that seems paradoxical, although I've never heard of that. That seems odd. Maybe some of the right wingers don't support having to make people do that. Okay, we agree. We would agree on that. But I have news for you. That is not the policy that is today. The policy today is you literally have to cross the border and surrender to ICE, which, by the way, I am older than ICE, so when people say that we need to reform or get rid of ICE, people, I told you I was going to get angry about this. People say in the Republican Party to dismantle the IRS. And that is treated as some, these guys are high-minded. But if you, God forbid, you say that you should get rid of ICE, or drastically reform it, or replace it with something else, or the DHS needs to be drastically changed, or the border policy has to be drastically changed and not be what this is, you will see how bad this is in a second. You are deemed as irrational, liberal, extremists. You have to literally cross the border as, and I'm saying this like with the asterisk that it is illegal, but it is the legal way to be processed. So, we'll go back to the article here. In videos posted on, we'll look at some of these. In videos posted on social media with this week's trip during a border trip, this week during a trip to the border, Representatives Sylvia Garcia and Joaquin Castro decried the massive strings of buoys equipped with chainsaw devices between them, deployed to stop irregular crossings along the Rio Grande River. Let me see what else here. What is Operation Lone Star? This is important before we go into the specifics here. Greg Abbott, the governor from Texas, remember, who was sending buses of people to New York City with bigot Ron DeSantis, launched Operation Lone Star in March of 2021, citing a rise in border crossings and fentanyl trafficking after Biden took office. Of course, there's no evidence of that, but he declared a state of emergency in most Texas counties along the border, a declaration he most recently renewed in May for 58 counties. Under the program, Abbott has deployed the Texas National Guard to the border. This is on top of ICE, on top of DHS, boosted funding for local law enforcement and sought to increase physical barriers. In May, he also announced the deployment of a special Texas Tactical Border Force. Abbott has sought help from Republican leaders in other states, including Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, who said in June that a group of 12 GOP governors had pledged to send 1,305 National Guardsmen and 231 law enforcement personnel to aid in the operation. This is all important. The Texas government has said that more than 390,500 migrants and asylum seekers have been apprehended under Operation Lone Star. Of that, more than 30,000 people have been arrested. So you have less than 10% of them being arrested, by the way. Many of whom were charged with a state crime of criminal trespass, which is basically saying you illegally crossed the border. Operation Lone Star continues to fill the dangerous gaps created by the Biden administration refusal to secure the border, Abbott's office has said, defending the program in the face of criticism from rights groups, legislators, and others. The operation has cost over $4.5 billion, and a March 22 report by the Texas Tribune, ProPublica, and a Marshall Project found that the program cost taxpayers $2.5 million per week. Previously, the Operation Lone Star has utilized razor wire on buoys. So they have a razor wire in the, here, I'll just show you guys this video. I will state up front, trigger warning, I guess, because they're going to talk about somebody that was killed here, a mom and a kid. And yeah, the body was found because they got trapped by the razor wire. They died. Nobody talked, like, when I say nobody talked about this, obviously not nobody talked about this. But the fact that this stuff isn't constantly being broadcast, the border as a human rights issue, not just the border as a right-wing propaganda, fascistic, nationalistic talking point, the border as a human rights issue. This should be all over the place. Sorry, I'll read this for everybody that's just listening. A body has been found trapped in the floating barrier on the Rio Grande at the US-Mexico border. The barrier is made up of buoys surrounded by sharp razor wire. And you guys can see that are watching, there's literally, that is not just like, oh, one little thing. The whole thing is covered in barbed wire, which blocks crossing and forces people into more dangerous waters, which is deeper. In fact, a second body was found nearby. The U.S. Department of Justice is suing Texas officials over the barrier, saying its placement violates federal law. It's dangerous to migrants and asylum seekers, and poses a risk to navigation and public safety. So there you have that. That's from the Human Rights Watch. Now, let's go to the recent trip by not Joaquin Phoenix, Joaquin Castro, and it's Joaquin with an N, not an M.
Traps that are being placed by Governor Abbott in the Rio Grande, and what exactly they're doing, and the state says that they're not a danger to anybody. Well, I want you to look right here at this chainsaw.
So he's literally, like, he's slapping his fingers on it's basically a buzz saw. It is like a table saw that is in the middle of the buoys.
Type device they hit right in the middle of these buoys, and then if you come right over here, you can see in the distance the razor wire, all that razor wire right against the river. So you really have a situation where the state government and Greg Abbott are treating human beings like animals. These are folks who are asylum seekers who try to petition for asylum in the United States. And this is how the men, women, and children, what they're seeing here when they try to present for asylum. It's incredibly dangerous, incredibly inhumane, and It's the reason that I've said that it's barbaric, because it is. You see that go all along there. People are getting stuck. There was a dead body that was stuck to this last week. Reports of a child that died. If you go closer to this razor wire, there's people's clothing that has been stuck to the wire because they've gotten stuck in that wire. And the state troopers, even if when they see families with a baby, with a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, they won't help the family if they're stuck in that wire. So it's incredibly inhumane, and that's why we're out here. Operation.
So, as you see, and he'll go on for a little bit, but Joaquin Castro is a Texas Democrat. He's a governor. He's not a governor. He's a congressman there, and his brother ran. I think his brother. He didn't run for president. It was his brother, I think, right? Ran for president. Didn't win, obviously, but he was pretty good. I mean, from what I remember. The sad part of this, obviously beyond like two people died amongst the many others that have been injured and the cruel border policy, is that Greg Abbott, Ron DeSantis, Trump, DHS, all of them at this point, ICE, the cruelty is the point. The brutality is the point. Failing to recognize, of course, or refusing to recognize, of course, the fact that it is not people just coming here to take advantage of, oh, we need welfare, oh, we need food stamps. I'm sure, there are people that have nefarious reasons, but the overwhelming majority of people that are trying to come in the country are trying to seek a better opportunity for themselves and and their families, which 100 years ago was mostly European people, so it didn't matter as much. It's, those people were still otherized. The Italians and the Irish were still otherized, and they were definitely treated poorly. And before that, you had German people, and before that, you had, it's, you can go all the way back, right? Immigrants throughout history in the American society, unfortunately, although America is a melting pot, it is supposed to be, some people continue to refuse to accept different people of different backgrounds, people from different areas, people that need help, by the way. As I always say, Statue of Liberty welcomes the poor, welcomes the sick, welcomes the hungry. The cruelty is the point. And it's unfortunate, it's frustrating to deal with, and that's why I have a hard time covering this stuff, because the real solutions aren't even on the table. The Biden administration is suing Greg Abbott over this, which is good, but isn't solving the issue, which they can't unilaterally do anyway, so I can only be so mad at them for that too. It is just something that our Congress people don't talk about it, our senators don't talk about it. The Republicans LARP, and they act like they actually care about the border. They don't care about the border, they care about fear mongering and creating xenophobia and a rise in people that makes them turn out for them. They don't actually want to, because look, building a wall is not going to make people not come. Obviously, even putting up barbed wire and chainsaw buoys doesn't stop people from coming. And what? Because they want Medicare? Well, they're not getting Medicare. Because they want food stamps? Well, they're not probably going to get food stamps. Because they want Social Security? They're not going to get Social Security. They want welfare in general? They don't have Social Security numbers. This issue is so frustrating to deal with. And in good faith, you know, if people came together in good faith, Democrats and Republicans could come to a solution, but they don't. I think that the Republican lawmakers don't deal with this at all in good faith. There is some reason to say we should have some physical barriers at the border, but that also means that maybe we should have a different process for getting people in and out of the country. Like, you can't just say, well, let's put up a wall. Let's put up a wall. Done. Now what? Mexico's going to pay for it. Okay. Thanks, Trump. Didn't do it, but okay. Thanks, Trump. All Trump did was put kids in cages. The real solutions are there. They exist. A real process could exist. You have experts in the field could really actually create a change. And by the way, if you also start punishing, and we talked about this before, but if you start punishing the businesses that hire people, that manipulate them, that coerce them, and underpay them for illegal wages, rather than punishing the individuals just seeking a better life, then you might see some change in this country. But no. Republicans want to support big business. That's priority number one. Always. Except other than getting themselves reelected. That is all I have for you tonight. Fun. If you guys enjoyed the show, you can hit the subscribe button. Please do. You can hit the thumbs up. Want to help us grow. It helps us in the algorithm. You can listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. You can support the show on patreon.com/Greater Society Media. You can join the Discord server, which is found in the description of this video or the description of the audio version of this podcast. And you can follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Greater Society Media. And you can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it, at Con O'Hanlon. And yeah, that's all I have. Remember that next week will probably be some sort of pre-recorded episode because of the hearing, the committee hearing that I have to go to and present at next Wednesday. If you are in the area, go to Central Bucks West, 7 p.m. to support the CB Fair Votes map that will actually prevent the gerrymandering of our school board map, which is what was passed by the school board. So if you want to support that, go to that meeting next Wednesday and keep an eye out for whatever content I come up with for next week as well, which will release probably at the same time that I normally release a show. So all that being said, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, stay safe. Peace.